Hi everybody, how's that for sound? Can you hear me at the back? Audible? Great. Thanks very much for joining me. Really pleased so many of you have chosen to come and hear about AI, chat, and what we think of it at Filtered. I'm Chris Littlewood, I work for Filtered, and we use technology to personalize learning, by which we mean we want to identify content, learning content of any sort, whether that's video, article, courses, whatever, that's particularly appropriate for an individual learner. And by appropriate, we mean it meets their needs, it helps them achieve their objectives, it builds skills that are going to be particularly valuable and have an impact in their organization. We do that with algorithms, with machine learning and artificial intelligence. And the reason we do that is, of course, so that we can do it at scale effectively. We can personalize a large amount of content, a large number of learning assets, and we can do it for a large number of users potentially in a cost-effective way. What I'd like to talk about today is AI and what it can do for L&D and what chat has to do with that. I think there's a particularly close and symbiotic relationship between chat and that conversational user interface and artificial intelligence and what it can achieve for learning and development. So I'd like to try and get that across today. So what has artificial intelligence got to offer us in learning and development? And by offer us, I mean offer us now. What can it actually achieve now rather than in the future in science fiction? What are the strengths of AI and how can those be applied to the challenges that we face in our organizations in L&D? So to try and understand that, I'd like to start by having a look at some other sectors and how they've been changed by using this sort of approach, by using algorithms and artificial intelligence more and more. So if you think first about the music industry, so that's an industry that's been transformed in terms of how people discover new music by Spotify and businesses like them. So of course Spotify's business is primarily about now identifying and recommending particular tune songs that might be engaging and might appeal to a particular user. So they've gone from being just a platform where you access music to being primarily about that recommendation, discovery of new music. If we think about video entertainment, then Netflix have done a similar thing. They're about trying to understand what individuals want from entertainment and trying to get that to them, whether that's through producing it or recommending it. Airbnb, they built a business in matching people with accommodation requirements for holiday or work, of course. And in a host of other sectors, these businesses have grown up that are all about connecting individuals with stuff, with things that they might need, whether that's products, services, or information. There are some commonalities about these businesses, and I think those are important when we think about what we might transfer to learning and development. So on the one hand, when we think about the users of these services, then they have very diverse needs that differ person to person, and they differ in a complex way. So thinking again about the music example, taste in music is of course a many-faceted thing. It's not as simple as genre or artist or even the mood of a song. It's a complex mix of those things. And it even, of course, changes over time. I don't always want the same recommendations. They depend on my mood, on the occasion, and how my tastes evolve over a longer time span. And that's true of all of these examples. All of them have examples of users whose needs differ user to user, and they differ in a complicated way. Then if we think about what's actually being recommended here, the products and services that are being recommended, those are very diverse and complex as well. The characteristics of songs differ just as the consumers of them do. And of course also the content is very voluminous. There are loads of potential recommendations that Spotify can make to me, very, very many. The scale of the problem is large. And so that leads on to the third thing that's common between these sectors, which is that all of these businesses have cracked this problem of connecting people with things that they need algorithmically using machine learning and increasingly artificial intelligence. So that's relevant because L&D shares these characteristics. If we think about learners, then of course we have complicated, complex, evolving, multifaceted and different person-to-person motivations or reasons to learn. My reasons to learn are a complicated mix of my role, my specialism, the projects I'm working on, my expertise, my preoccupations, or my preferences. And on the supply side, on the sort of the content side in those examples, then I would argue that we have very rich resources available to us in learning and development, whether that's in our learning management systems, in our organization with bought-in libraries or internally produced content, or in the cloud, in resources like MOOCs or TED Talks. So we've got a very similar looking problem to those other sectors, diverse requirements and diverse content that might need them. But of course the missing bit is, how do we match the two? How do we connect those people together? Just to sort of flesh out one of those examples a little bit further. So this is a Spotify example again. This is a screenshot from the web page of a company called the Echo Nest, which was bought by Spotify in 2014. And this is the company that powers Spotify's recommendations. You can see what they're about from their webpage. So they're about song and artist understanding. So that's the user understanding. The content understanding I was talking about. What are the characteristics of songs and the artists who produce them? Fan understanding, so understanding the needs, or in music's case, the preferences, tastes of fans, and how you can predict those from their characteristics. And then finally, that bottom bar there, playlist, APIs, and more. So that's just about making that connection finally. It's building platforms and applications that can use that understanding of people who consume music and the music itself to connect the two and make recommendations. So there's a direct analogy here with learning and development. Just as instead of songs and artists, then we have the learning content. Instead of fans, we've got learners, although some of our learners are fans, and we've got playlists. So we want to try and match the two things together with products, whether that's a learning management system, whether it's a web-based platform or something else. Now, this is precisely our mission at Filtered. We want to understand learners, understand learning, and match the two. So we're trying to crack this problem. So I hope I've made the case that there is a problem here that looks very similar to one that's been cracked in a load of other sectors. And if you can accept that, then there still remains the question, why is artificial intelligence any help here? Why is this something that we should want to use to try and solve this problem? To try and shed a bit of light on that, I'd like to tell a little story that will be familiar, in part, I think, to some of you if you follow artificial intelligence in the news. In the last couple of years, then, a company called DeepMind built and trained an artificial intelligence to play this board game, which is called Go. It's a deceptively simple-looking game, just two sorts of pieces. The object is to surround your opponent's pieces, and then you can capture them. It's deceptively simple. In practice, this is a much more complicated game, for example, in chess, because of the sheer number of potential games that can eventuate. At any particular point in the game, there are typically many moves, 10 moves or so, more even. And so what that means is the number of potential games is astronomically large. And that's why DeepMind picked on this game as a challenge for artificial intelligence. They wanted to build their expertise, they're an AI-focused company, and to demonstrate it, to test their expertise with a difficult problem. And this is difficult for computers to solve, to play Go, because computationally you can't just do it by brute force. Because there are so many potential games, you can't just say logically, if I move there, then these are the possibilities, and each of those could lead to these branches. That's just beyond the power of processing power of computers now, or at any point that anyone predicts in the future. So you have to solve the problem in a different way. the way I think of it is the computer has to play the game in a more human way. It can't do that detailed tactical calculation. What it has to do is observe patterns, understand what sorts of board situation are strong and what sorts of board situation are weak, and in typical board situations, what might be a good move or a weaker move. The reason I'm talking about this is because there is it's about the way that DeepMind went about training this artificial intelligence. So what they did was they built an AI. So this is a sort of typical structure for an artificial intelligence. It's a deep layered neural network. So that's just a sort of logic machine that you can train through example. And the examples that they gave this logic machine were of not of world championship play, but of strong amateur players of this board game. They compiled a database of very, very many games between club players of Go, and they trained the algorithm, the AI, not to win all the time, but to emulate their style of play. Can train by example, and the algorithm can replicate the play of a club level player. What they then did was got the AI to play itself. They call the AI AlphaGo. So they got it to play itself. Once it had reached this club level standard, they got it to play itself over and over again, and then it could work out which of the moves that it deployed were successful, which were less successful, and iterate from there to become better and better, to the point where it beat actually 2 world champions at Go, Lee Sedol and KG. So the thing that I think is worth taking away from this is that these sorts of AI are good at emulating human decision-making. If you can come up with a lot of examples of human decision-making in a reasonably structured way, then you can use that to train the artificial intelligence to copy human decision-making, and it can embody it. So why is AI good at solving this problem at playing Go? It's good at solving it because humans are good at it. It's copying their style of play, and it's piggybacking off that. And AI is good at copying humans. And those things apply in learning and development too. So in L&D, humans are very good at making content recommendations. If I think about the recommendations for learning that I'm most likely to act on, and the ones that resonate with me most and that I've derived most value from, usually they've been made by people who know me well. It's typically a human recommendation. I trust them, and I'm more likely to act on them. And through experience, I know that those are good recommendations. That's of course because they know me, they know my role, they know what my preferences are, and they know what I work on. So when they encounter a piece of content that is likely to help, likely to resonate, then it occurs to them that they can do that bit of training needs analysis, that bit of content curation. So these activities that we're used to doing as L&D professionals, we're good at as human beings. And the good news is we can use that those examples of our decision making to train an artificial intelligence to do the same thing. And why do we want to train an AI to do the same thing? So we can scale it. So we can't always, as L&D departments, focus on the whole organization and really individually think through what the requirements are for every individual learner. But what we can do is do that for a sample and then use machine learning and an AI to scale that and have a much wider impact. So this is what we're about at Filtered. This is our learning recommendations engine. It's called Magpie. What it's doing is been designed so that you can point it at a library of content or several libraries of content in an LMS, in several LMSs, or a mix learning assets in an LMS in the cloud. And then for each individual learner, prioritize that library so that it's surfacing the stuff that's going to be most valuable for them in terms of their role, what they're working on, their current confidence and expertise, etc. If you'd like to understand more about Magpie, then please come and speak to us during the day. Well, stall's just there. It's number 26, just at the back of the arena. And we're there all day, of course, and there are drinks at the stall at 4. Sorry. In the bottom right of the screen here, then you can see there's a chat interface, conversational interface, or chatbot, whatever you want to call it. In this screenshot, it's actually just doing a bit of onboarding. It's telling the learner how to use the platform, a few things to try to get them going. But why do we use a chatbot to do that? Why don't we use another user interface, a tool, or something similar? I guess this is where I have to explain, why does chat have a relationship with artificial intelligence? What's it there for? If we think again about what we're trying to do, we're trying to potentially consider a massive number of learning assets, learning a huge variety of learning content, and from in that huge sea, pull out the things that are going to be particularly relevant to a learner. So in order to do that sort of thing, we of course need an understanding of the learner. We need to know them, just as when I get a human content recommendation, I'm relying on that person knowing something about me to make a good one. And that's why we use chat. It's because it's a conversational, engaging, natural way and a configurable way in terms of implementing this for clients, of building an understanding of a learner and doing that gradually in a non-intrusive way. So that might be simple things. So this is an example. We're just asking questions about someone's specialism within learning and development. We might also ask about the sector that they work in, the function, the department in their organization, the level of experience. We can also ask things in a lot more detail, so we can drill down at the level of, we've made a particular learning recommendation. What did they think of that? They've engaged with it. Did they find it useful? Further down the line, we can ask them, what are your takeaways from that? Even further down the line, we can ask, have you had a chance to apply it? Did it actually make a difference to you? What's the impact been? So we can build, that's useful information, of course, about an asset. We want to know whether things are having an impact in our organization. But it's also useful information about the learner. We're building a profile of them, able to make better recommendations to them in the future. And on the right-hand side, there are some ideas of other things that we can ask that build an increasingly sophisticated picture of a learner. So we can ask simple things directly, like which skills are you interested in building? We can also ask, what are you working on? That might be a way of blending short-term, tactical, performance support type learning priorities. What support do you need today to help you with the things on your plate? With the longer term, this is my career ambition, this is my professional ambition, these are the skills I want to build over the longer term. And down at the bottom, we're asking, this is an example of something we're working on at the moment. So asking a much more open question, how are you feeling today? And allowing the learner to provide an unstructured response to that. And we're actually working on this with a company called IntRequest, the idea of incorporating this into a chat conversation and using that to make a sort of subtle change to the way that we make learning recommendations for that learner. So if we ask how someone's feeling that day, we can, for instance, start to try and assess, are they, on top of things, well motivated, confident, and all they need is maybe some technical support with the particular challenges they have that day, the things that they've got on their plate. Or maybe their state of mind isn't so strong and they need some help building resilience and building their motivation at the start of the day. So we can sort of subtly go down a different route in terms of the sorts of recommendations we make to a learner. This is where Mathilde in our data science team is working on this project using natural language processing. So taking a user's response to this question and then making a judgment about what sort of emotion, what sort of state of mind the learner might be in. I hope that was interesting and or useful. Please come and have a chat to us at the stall, like I say, number 26, over the course of the day, if you have any questions or if you just want to learn a little bit more. Thanks again, everyone, and don't forget the drinks at 4 o'clock there, if you're still around. Thank you. Cheers.